Hello, people online. We're going to be live in just 1 minute, so be patient, and we'll get going.
Ready to roll? We've got quite a lot of stuff in interest there. What? We're going to have quite a lot of intros.
I know it's silent. There's way more slides. I'm like, oh shit, we should get going.
Yeah, but that's fine because we have got.
We're live.
Which button advances?
What?
Which button advances the slides?
Here. Here advances the slides. Cool.
Cool.
You want to kick us off? You always do.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to DSO LG, or DevSecOps London Gathering. We're quite squeezed in tonight, but thank you to Just Eat for accommodating us. Okay, so should we go to the next one?
Yeah, buttons right in front of you.
Yeah, so this is us. There's all four of us here tonight. We haven't seen all four of us together
in front of your icon.
for a while.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then move.
Oh, that's you and that's Steve.
I know. It's close. All right, that's us.
That's us. If you want to get in touch with us individually, that's how you get in touch with us. We're on LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn. I don't think any of us use Twitter anymore. You can send us a tweet. X, yeah, sorry.
We do not mean X.
Or the best way to get in touch with us is through our team email address, team@dsolg.com. So if you want to get a hold of us, if you've got any ideas for any talks, or you want to just communicate to us, then that's the best way to do it. There are other ways of contacting us as well. And we also have a DSO Overflow podcast. So our podcast is a monthly event. We try to speak to some of the people that have spoken at our London Gathering. We also have some other talks as well. So the last one we had was Kennedy Tokora from Michigan, who talks about security chaos engineering. That was our last one, which is a very good listen. So yeah, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe and you like us, just bang on that bell and tell us how much you love us.
Just do the shoutouts.
Yeah, we have a lot of friends in the community space, and so we love shouting those people out. A couple of those leaders we're lucky enough to be friends with. One of which is sitting in the audience here, and it's been the responsible person to get that seat today. So thank you so much.
I'm Dita from Ladies of London Hippie Society. All the ladies.
Your lady.
Yeah.
And Ladies of London Hacking Society has had some really fun museum visits recently. Some really
Yeah, for women who want to get more technical, we have labs and we also have social events every month.
I don't see that.
don't think that anywhere, but London DevOps have been doing some really great stuff recently. So yeah.
All right.
And so just so you know, OWASP, we usually have someone from OWASP here. Where's OWASP?
Where?
There it is. OWASP London, they actually have their 20th anniversary event tomorrow. There is a wait list. So if you do want to go along, you might have to go on that wait list. But it is tomorrow, and it should be a good session.
Yeah.
Remember where it is?
It's over in Pancras, Pancras Square, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The space keep opening up,
Keep
so I feel
opening.
like if you
Yeah, spaces
Yeah.
are being made available. So if you do want to go to OWASP London and celebrate the 20th anniversary of OWASP, that is a good thing to go to.
Yes.
I'll be there.
Ugh.
Okay.
Over to me. We wouldn't be able to do all the things we do without our glorious sponsors, of which we now have 4, which is pretty cool, including obviously Just Eat, our event sponsor. Thank you very much. Up here, one of the founders of, if you understand what ASPM technology is, Application Security Posture Management. If you're curious about what that is, do check out the Apiro website. It's easy enough, apiro.io. Keep it quick. Sysdig, you're probably familiar with Sysdig. They have an open source project called Falco, which is great for low-level eBPF-based observability. But if you want to expand that out and scale it to a more platform security solution, Sysdig is there for you. Agentless visibility and control. It's pretty hot, so I do check that out. Prisma Cloud. I don't know much about Prisma Cloud, so I'm going to defer that to one of the two at the back, either Steve or Tom, who's volunteered to say something about Prisma Cloud. That's not bad. That's how it is. All right, I like that. That's probably, you got to get in touch with marketing. He's not in marketing, clearly, but that he probably should be. And our new sponsor, Prevent, Detect, and Mitigate Security Breaches with Tigera. Tigera also leads with an open source project called Calico. It's a fantastic Kubernetes CNI, so do check that out. And it's sort of a gateway drug into learning more about Tigera. So go check them out.
And then tonight we also have our food and drink sponsor, so one of the pizza dinners, the drink are courtesy of GCS. So if Gemma and Jack want to quickly stand up from up there, or come up here, whatever you can do.
We'll pop down. I'm not that tall.
There's 3 of this slide,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's one slide and then one.
I'll pop the next one. There you go.
Just really quick, but a bit about me. I've done DevOps recruitment for 7 years now, and DevSecOps recruitment something that we've been leaning a lot towards, and really want to make focus on the fact that that's not just one job. So we're kind of looking at the market with companies that we've partnered with over the last few years that do DevSecOps successfully, and companies that maybe might not, so they need help on going through that transition. And myself and Jack, I cover the contract side, and Jack will cover permanent.
Yeah, I'm Jack McMillan, so I run the permanent side of DevSecOps. We're part of a business called GCS Cyber, part of a wider technology recruitment business called GCS. Lawrence is just in the corner, he's our director. Hi, Lawrence. And yeah, everything you need to know in regards to recruitment. If you've got any questions for the market at the moment, you know where we are for this. So
we do have just there, you can scan it there to our website, and I'll bring up the different roles that we have live at the minute. But grab us afterwards, and we'll definitely run through anything.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Enjoy your pizza.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
They're right here. Do I do that? Back to you.
Oh yeah, so if you do like to become a speaker, then you can do that quite easily. This is your community at the end of the day. So if you want to share an idea or a technology or something that is interests us, it could be on any subject related to DevSecOps. So it could just be the dev bit, or it could be the ops bit, or the full shebang of security as well. So do get in touch with us. We do 2 types of talks. We do a lightning talk, or the which is about 15-20 minutes. So if you've got an idea but you don't have the full presentation yet, or the full idea, you can come along and test it out here, and you're more than welcome to do that. Or if you've got a fully fledged presentation and you want to tell us something amazing about what you're doing, and I'm sure you all have something to tell us that's amazing that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, do get in touch with us.
Fantastic. And Frankie?
Finally, save the date. We actually have one of our speakers for our next event right here in the crowd. So John will be joining us. We will be back at Eficode, next to Michael. So we'll be on Queen Street, right near Cannon Street, on Wednesday, the 20th of March, with both John and also Ricardo, talking about AI.
And I think that's going to be a popular one, so get in there quick.
Yeah, pretty awesome. All right, so here's a large description of our speaker, Darren Richardson, almost as large as the man himself. Darren, you want to come in? You can skip past, come on and just introduce yourself and tell everybody about what you do and why you're doing it, and then hand it right over to you.
Cool.
This is a different presentation. 1 second. Technical issues. It's not a good presentation unless you start with technical issues. They've asked me to introduce myself. I'm not going to just yet. Sorry about that. We'll get to it. But I want to start my talk with an extremely obscure fact. The average age of the captain of a Japanese fishing boat is 58. And now you're all sat there thinking, what the hell does that have to do with DevSecOps? Like, that doesn't mean anything. We'll get to it. Don't worry. The captain's average age is 58. Yes.
We got a question on that.
Well, it's okay. I'm happy. I don't. Well, we'll get to it. Don't worry. So, who am I? An introduction. I'm a cybersecurity guy. I'm kind of purple team in that I keep getting put in to do blue team things when I'd rather be doing red team things. So I kind of spread out in various directions. I have been an IoT device security lead for a startup, which is what I'm going to talk about here. I'm almost an expert in compliance things against my will. And I speak loudly, if not particularly often. If you see me quiet off in the corner, don't be offended. That's just who I am. I write blogs, and I'm from Finland, kind of. I lived here for a long time, not here in this building, but in this country for a long time. And then I moved to Finland because I wanted somewhere that would be slightly colder. And yeah, I actually moved quite a long time before Brexit, so I'm not a Brexit refugee. I actually moved away from the country. I fled before it was cool. So just keep that in mind. I do have to add a disclaimer, because from what I remember of the British people, there is some, you have like watersheds and stuff. I do occasionally curse like a sailor. I'm trying to rein it in, but if I swear, please just overlook it. And let's see how we get on. So I want to talk about ships. And the reason I want to talk about ships is because I've actually spent a lot of time on them. I spend most summers on my boat in the Baltic Sea, which sounds kind of exotic, doesn't it? My boat is crap. You can walk faster than my boat, so it's not as exciting, but somehow it has some extremely advanced technology on, and that's what we're going to be talking about, among other ships. I'm guessing you all know Rolls-Royce. I have dates here, 2017, Rolls-Royce and a Finnish ferry company called Finferries created Project Swan, which was a autonomous vessel navigation system. And the idea was very specific. In the archipelago of Finland, which is the largest archipelago in the world, don't believe what Canada would tell you otherwise. Finland is larger. You knew I was going to do it. Yeah, so in this archipelago, we get around with ferries. We don't really use cars. Well, we use cars, but we drive cars onto the boats. And the whole point of Project Swan was to see, can we automate that? And what happened was there was a system with both remote drive capability and autonomous navigation. And this was actually a world first at the time, where we transported human cargo, which is the most depressing way you can put it. We transported people from the mainland out to an island and back. One way it was remotely guided, and the way back was autonomous. So this, at the time, was actually a world first. And then for no reason that anyone can figure out, Rolls-Royce decided, okay, we did that, and they dropped the rest of the project. And I'm not really sure where that mentality came from, but it led the way for a company that's very close to my heart. Even now I don't work there, but Grok Technologies was a startup in southwestern Finland, which doesn't have a lot to its name aside from its shipping business. We have a couple of good shipyards, and we used to have paper mills, but everyone knows what has happened to the paper business over the last 20 years, so they're not so much anymore. But the idea of Grok Technologies was very simple. The average age of a Japanese sea captain is 58, and that means in the next 10 years, they are all going to be retired. Can we remove the captain? And that was the whole point of this. So what we had was the idea of trying to create this autonomous navigation system for the Japanese shipping market. And I'm going to briefly walk you through the technology that I'm allowed to walk you through, because some of it's protected by mountains of contracts by various people. So what happened is we basically stuck a camera on the front of the boat and built a system to recognize anomalies in the sea. Things like floating shipping containers that have fallen off, which happens a lot more commonly than you would expect. And what we did was we built this system. We built it with GPS sensors. We built it with both day and night vision cameras. We built it with these kind of motion sensors, so you knew the yaw of the boat, you knew where it was tilting, you knew if it was upside down that was bad. You have basically all these sensors of how you can tell where the ship is. And that was the first phase. The second phase was, can we feed this data into an AI model who will tell the ship what to do? That's phase 2. Phase 3, can it control the ship without human interaction? We haven't got that yet, because it turns out the advisory system is actually a lot more helpful. And what my job was here, we can maybe go to my next introduction slide. As you can see, I'm an extremely sensible cybersecurity professional. My job was basically to ask, how do we secure a remotely connected system that's only remotely connected some of the time when it's near a port? How do we keep that safe when we can't see what's happening with it? How do we maintain resilience on that ship? And that's what I'm going to talk about at first, is this edge-based IoT infrastructure that we built into the ships. Here is where I didn't fill the slide in, so I still have some of the remaining lorem ipsum. Feel free to ignore that. These slides are a year and a half old at this point. That shows how much I'm paying attention to this. So, the problems, I'm sure you actually all know the problems with security and IoT. And this is actually the thing that annoys me. Can I get a show of hands if any of you work in or close to IoT in the past? Cool. Can you explain to me what the hell is going on in the IoT industry? Not you specifically, but anyone can explain to me why things ship without encryption.
Simplicity sells.
Simplicity, yes, exactly. It is simple to push it out without encryption, without any kind of data security, full of injection vulnerabilities, and then everyone says, oh, IoT is dangerous. You shouldn't have IoT. No. People are stupid and they ship IoT in a dangerous way. They ship it in such a bad way that you could actually compare it to systems in 1999 and say, this is what was happening in 1999, except in the IoT industry, where it's happening today, right now. How many of you have seen the recent image of someone discovering that their LG washing machine is using 5.8 gigabytes of data? How much laundry is that person doing that it's collecting 5.8 gigabytes of data? who here has IoT devices in their home? Don't be afraid. I'm not going to do anything about it. But who has? Okay, lots of you. Who has looked at their security and checked? What did you find there by chance?
It's all running offline for a very good reason.
Precisely. And when I did this talk last, I was asking people who has IoT in a separated network away from everything else. And one person at the back just proudly shot their hand right up. And I was like, yes, you. Let me buy you a beer. You're doing it right. So we know the problems with IoT. We don't know why people aren't solving them, except for the fact they don't want to. Because if you pay 10 euros for an IoT device and it has a security flaw, then what are you going to do? Throw it away. You've lost 10 euros. Who cares? You're not going to. It's not like if you buy a MacBook and you have a security problem, then you're going to find an Apple store and throw it at an employee. There is a difference with how you will react, and the IoT industry gets away with that. My thought was to try and make sure the IoT industry, at least where I could reach it, did not get away with that. So I want to talk a bit about the proliferation of devices. Here is a graph which shows the number of active connections, including projected connections over the next couple of years. See how the dark one is traditional, dark blue is traditional IT devices, light blue is IoT. See how next year it's expected to be 3 times higher than traditional IT. These are the devices that go into your homes. No, worse, these are the devices that go into your hospitals. These are the devices that sit there and read your health data, and no one seems to care. There's not a lot I can do about that other than come here and yell at you people who actually had nothing to do about it. So please accept my apology. I'm not angry. I'm just, this bugs me, and I think it should bug you too. So the number of IoT devices is going to increase, and I have some interesting statistics here. 46% home penetration rate in the United States of IoT devices. 1 in 2 homes have an IoT device. 86% of medical facilities have IoT devices. 86%. There's a lack of standardized security controls because I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And this is what I asked the last time I did this presentation. Why is this? Why aren't standard security controls in place for IoT devices as they're expected to be everywhere else? And this is the big one that I come back to. The users don't know. And because the users aren't pushing back, the companies can get away with it. Exactly as, hey, can I get your name? The IoT guy who answered the questions, who's not looking at me. Hello? What's your name? Matt. As Matt. Well, it's okay. I'm the one who's up here, so you don't have to feel bad about it. It's just my presentation that looks stupid. So thanks. But as Matt was saying, insufficient user awareness. What happens is you don't know. Again, not specifically you. You, all the people out there, don't know. They don't know to push back. And companies get away with whatever they want. So, and another thing, resource constraints. This is, in my opinion, the big one. What you can do is you can spend lots of money on a decent device which will have everything you need, have a trusted platform module built in. It will have the ability to run encryption, or you can spend practically nothing on a piece of crap. And then you can send that piece of crap to people's homes. And that's what the IoT industry is doing. So let's talk about this. We've been talking about the shift left in security for, who knows, 15 years. Where has IoT been in this discussion? Were they like in the bathroom? They didn't hear us? Okay, here is the discussion. Shift left, consider it at the start. Keep it in mind as you go through the development process, and by the end, you will end up with a secure platform. You will end up with secure IoT. If you think of it as nice to have, it will be added hastily at the end, if it's added at all. And we all know it won't be. So last one is lack of security updates and patching. It's this kind of mentality of ship it and it's done. Ship it and it's done, as if these devices don't sit on networks for decades at a time. And we're actually going to come to that later because there's some interesting byplay between industrial IoT and critical infrastructure that we're going to discuss. Data privacy is another big one. We've already discussed it though. These things are in your home, they're in your hospitals, and they're unsecured. So now I'm going to make you all a little bit paranoid. Sorry about that. Don't worry, they're probably not spying on you much. So what we do with that is threat modeling. Now, hands up, how many people have done threat modeling? About half of you. How many of you think you should be doing threat modeling? About the same number. Threat modeling is, actually, let's quickly run through it. Threat modeling in 1 minute. You take a threat model, such as, I'm going to actually time this to see if I can do it in 1 minute. Okay, you take a threat model, something like Stride. Stride is broken down into these 6 categories. You have spoofing. I have them written here, so I don't have them written here. It's a challenge. Spoofing. P, don't remember. R, repudiation. I, integrity. D, DOS, yeah, why not? So the point of the threat model is to think critically about what you are doing. It's to take a step away from the technology and think as a process what is happening in your systems. And the best way to do threat modeling is to throw technology away, to not really consider the technology. You don't want to say that something can't happen, so you shouldn't consider it. That's a great way to overlook things. What you want to do is step away from the technology and talk about what you are doing as a platform. And we have some examples of that. What you might do is consider your usage of the internet, your usage of connected peripherals, your usage of IoT. In IoT specifically, what we're looking at is this kind of expanded threat surface that occurs when your devices aren't locked in a traditional server cabinet, which the Just Eat people helpfully told me was right next door, as far as I'm aware. So what we have in IT is things that are spread around. And there's this mentality with threat modeling to kind of get caught up in the bad and the boring, because threat modeling is a 3-4 day exercise. And actually, when we were threat modeling this system, we were at the end of day 2 of 3. We were kind of 4:30 in the afternoon. We were all tired. We were all kind of thinking of home. And then this guy, quiet guy who sat next to me, says, he looks at the plan. He looks at the picture of the ship we have on the whiteboard. He looks at me and quietly goes, "This is on the sea, right?" And I was like, "Yes, that's where boats traditionally go." And his response was, "Do we have to consider pirates?" That was the coolest threat modeling meeting I've been part of. The coffee went away, the rum came out, and we just sat there researching pirate tactics and how they interact with ships. We spent 4 hours there. It was 9 o'clock when we went home, because we were all just discussing pirates and piracy and how it looks and how it affects ships. And so threat modeling doesn't have to be serious business. It can be fun. And I do want to talk about defense in depth, because in my opinion, I think there's kind of this shift away from, well, obviously there's a shift away from perimeter security, but in my opinion, it's also not going fast enough. And what you have here is a traditional defense in depth model, which is actually kind of useful for IoT, because what we have in IoT is a physical layer which actually kind of expands beyond the boundaries of the outer layers, because you have devices in places where they traditionally wouldn't be. You have your sensor on the wall. There's a security camera out in the hallway up in the top left corner. These devices are in public view. They are reachable. They are discoverable. And that means that your threat model actually switches around a little bit so that you have physical and network kind of all over the place. Not in this model, but this gives you an idea of how you apply these policies into physical IoT security. a bit of advice that because I realize at this point I've kind of been doomsaying IoT, saying that it's terrible, it's the worst thing in the world, and I would actually like to leave with some positive, this section with some positive. Default to secured, because this is just the shift left mentality, and I realize you've been hearing people say this for a long time. The people in IoT aren't listening, so I'm saying it again. Use a trusted platform module. This is vital in the storing of cryptographic keys on systems that are not going to be in your control. Remember, these are on ships. They're on client ships, out of your reach, often in the middle of the sea. They can't reach traditional certificates. Yes, they can't reach traditional certificate infrastructure. So what you need is the ability to ensure that the encryption is on the system and remains there. You need to ensure that the keys it uses to communicate remain there. And if someone steals the system, you have to be sure that they can't get those certificates. Trusted platform module, available in the TX2 Nano, I believe, but that's a $400 device compared to the Raspberry Pi Pico, which is $4. So you have a price increase of $100, and now we can start to see why IoT is not moving forward. A personal note, as someone who worked in security in the shipping industry, I wish there weren't quite so many shipping metaphors in IT. You have Kubernetes running Helmsman with Helm charts. You have containers. So you have this interesting situation where, okay, the containers are broke, and you don't know whether you call IT or the doctor. So if we could avoid this in the future, that would be extremely helpful. But you should use containers. Containers give you this cool resiliency against crashes. It knows the state it should be in, and you can have it with the mentality of cattle, not pets. If a container dies, kill it, bring a new one up. And what we ended up with was actually Kubernetes running in two different endpoints on the ship itself, on the sensor unit, and then on a central unit, which was basically controlling everything. And the sensor unit gathered data, the central unit just sat there and collected the data. When it got to port, it sent it to the AI models to figure out how the hell you navigate the seas. And the barriers for this are actually coming down. Micro Kubernetes by Canonical is what, 200 megabytes? K3s is down to 40. So it's getting to the point where even the device size constraints are not an issue anymore. The only issue we have that remains is laziness. However, eventually I left Grok Technologies and started working at a company called Eficode, who handle a lot of DevOps stuff for various companies, including critical infrastructure and IoT suppliers. So I stepped into the supply chains, thinking about power plants, thinking about law enforcement, and thinking about hospitals. The first power station was installed in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, in the 1800s. That also represents the last time it was updated. The power systems of countries are lagging behind. And then you have this kind of domino effect where you're running this 10-year-old software on 30-year-old hardware, and that's the 30-year-old hardware that's just been updated because that's when the last patch was. So you get these kind of weird Frankenstein effects of, okay, this is supposed to be modern and we have this idea of tying it into smart infrastructure. How do we do that? I don't know. How exactly do you interface 30-year-old hardware with modern software? If anyone has ideas on that, I'm happy to hear it, because you kind of get these kind of problematic areas of stagnancy because it is so expensive to upgrade critical infrastructure. because it is embedded into everything we do. And somewhat controversially, I'd say the best thing to do is not to connect it to the internet. I realize that's not the way we're going, but until it is ready to interface with modern technology, we shouldn't be trying to force them together, because then we get this disjointed mess. But that's what people want, so I guess that's where we're going. But what I can tell you with IoT, there's this kind of, one second. I can open a beer in the middle of a presentation and know I'm back tonight. I kind of love this country. So what happens is we get this situation where people believe that their problems are unique. And there is this thought in IoT, because they have to merge these 30-year-old systems with 10-year-old interfaces into modern technology, that their use case is different and special. And it's not. They have the same systems, they have the same ideas, they have the same issues, they're running the same injections, they have the same databases, they're lacking the same encryption. They've just decided that their use case is special. It is not. And that's actually really good news, because it means we already have the solutions. We don't have to break the box here. We don't have to even think out. Maybe we press up against it slightly, but we're definitely not outside the box. We just have to get them to do what every other developer has been doing for 10 years. And it's that simple. And there's this lot of this idea that I've run into that I want to talk about, that IoT versus industrial IoT, one of them is bad and one of them is not. And it's not the case. One of them is hidden and one of them is not. As we said, there is a camera out there in the hallway, top left, you can see it. There are power cables running throughout this building. You can't see them. IoT is just hidden. It is not good. It is in lots of cases, not all cases, but it's an example of security through obscurity. And this is basically just what I wanted to come here and say, which is we need to be leading this discussion towards how they can apply principles that we've been applying for 10 years and raising accountability of why they're lagging behind. Because if we can do that, then the graph we saw earlier, where we have 3 times as many IoT devices as traditional IT devices, will not look quite so scary. And then I want to kind of take us, how much time do I have? I'm still on Finnish time. This looks okay. I want to take us off-road a bit, because geopolitics actually plays an interesting role in what we have to secure against. I'm from Finland, as we have discussed, and I want you to take a look at this slide, cyber warfare as a prelude to invasion. Because actually, I wasn't sure if I should skip this slide. This set of slides is about a year old. There's a reason why this might not be relevant. But as mentioned, I'm from Finland, and Finland has a few interesting features about it. The home of Linus Torvalds, who invented Linux, Git, and extremely angry emails. If you've ever read any of those, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, Google it. They're hilarious. We also have salmiakki, which is it's like ammonium chloride based licorice. It's weird. And it's kind of like the Marmite of candy. You either love it or you hate it. And we're also the proud owner of 800 miles of border with Russia. This actually shapes my daily work quite a lot. I'm assuming less than it shapes most of yours, because as you know, a border with Russia is a precarious thing to have these days. You're lucky you're on an island. You only have a border with the Welsh. I'm not sure what their hacking infrastructure is like, but I suspect it's not quite this advanced. So we have to think about the threats we're going to face. And this goes back into all of the things we've talked about here. We have to think about, when we were talking about the shipping industry, we had to think about the threats that face the shipping industry. So we had to talk about pirates. When we're talking about securing critical infrastructure in Finland, we have to recognize what our principal threat actor is likely to be. And this comes back to threat modeling. This comes back to the idea that we shouldn't think we know everything. We shouldn't think we know things. We should analyze and we should examine. So, a slice of life from how I go through things, living next to the worst neighbor in the world. And it's kind of like having this neighbor behind a giant fence. And on the other side of the fence, there's this dog. And it's barking as loudly as it possibly can. And it's extremely angry. But we don't know whether the dog is this giant Cerberus type thing or a little poodle, just making lots of noise. So we actually get an interesting range of attacks from Russian IPs. Mostly they are noise, they're nonsense, they're just script kiddie stuff. But it's kind of interesting how, for example, if we look at servers positioned in the UK, we'll actually see Brazil quite high on the list of attacking targets. It's kind of a cute, and actually, if you break down malware, what I found quite often is comments and code written in Portuguese. So you can kind of tell it's coming from Brazil. However, when we look at Finnish traffic, the majority of it is coming from Russia. So Finland, for a long time, had a kind of neutrality idea, which was, we don't want to join NATO, we don't want to annoy Russia, but we also don't want to join whatever Russian things are doing. We're just sat between everyone trading. We're chill, it's fine. But we had some reasons for concern. Here is the list. This is the list of Russian invasions over the past 100 years. Notice Finland in 1939 and 1940. That's when they casually decided to walk across the Finnish border because they thought the Allies wouldn't help them. They're the Finns. And they were right. The Finns basically fought tooth and nail and lost part of their country, but remained independent. But this is the list of causes for concern. We all know the Ukraine. Germany in 1945. I guess we give them a pass for that one. Georgia is... I'm missing Georgia. I do apologize. Apparently my list of invasions is not complete. Yeah, I mean, I like to keep it in there. Just, I don't want to be accused of skewing the statistics. But yeah, this is actually what Finland has been facing. And as we saw in Ukraine, cyber attacks preceded physical attacks. So that's what we're actually on the lookout for. Of course, this kind of became irrelevant in shaping security decisions for one reason, and this is the reason that you're all sat there thinking again, like with my Japanese fisherman statistic, what the hell does this have to do with IoT? I find myself repeating, these devices are in your homes. They are in your hospitals. They are everywhere you don't want these devices to be, and you definitely don't want them to be unsecured. So think about your threat models and think about your threat actors. Think about the people who will want to get access to your system. Because, yeah, lots of the attacks are just attacks of convenience, but those are the same. They're generic everywhere. But the actual APTs who want to get into your system, thank you, those are great things to actually consider at this point when you are considering a threat model. It's easy to take a look from the inside and the outside. And I do want to raise this idea. In 1975, there was this thing called the Helsinki Accords. Anyone heard of it? Good. I hadn't, and I'd lived in Finland for a decade before I had. So that's kind of embarrassing. Basically, it was the rights inherent in sovereignty in a country, signed by 35 nations. And I was at Cybersecurity Nordic, a convention in Helsinki in 2022, and I heard this woman, Anakin Tick, talk about the idea of a digital security accords to prevent the idea of cyber warfare between countries, because right now the controls that exist are not functional, they are invisible, they are unused, and they are being pushed forward by the EU, which has great sides and is the slowest entity on the planet. So by the time any of these laws can be useful, it may well be too late. It was for Ukraine. So having the lack of cyber sovereignty is something that needs to be addressed. And whether it needs to be addressed in a new version of the Helsinki Accords or some other platform, people want to push that forward, please do. Think about that. Think about what cyber warfare looks like now. And that is one of the difficulties in labeling cyber warfare. And this is why we're talking about geopolitics. What is cyber warfare? How do we trace it? Because who here uses a VPN? Every single hand up. And most of you, I'm guessing, are using a VPN because you want to watch better shows on Netflix. But what threat actors are using VPNs for are obfuscating the sources of their attacks. And this is a problem that I have no idea how to solve. As I've mentioned, you can usually look into malware. You can usually find signatures. If your malware is written in Portuguese, for example, but is sourced from a Chinese IP address, you can be pretty sure, actually, no, that might still be China. But bad example. I blame the beer. But I'm actually going to skip this. Maybe I'm not going to skip this because this is extremely important. This was a malware attack that I believe hit British hospitals. Yeah, the NHS WannaCry attack. These devices are in your homes and in your hospitals. There was an interesting research paper at my university, the University of Jyväskylä, which is the idea of these one-pixel attacks to hack the artificial intelligence systems behind medical scanners. By embedding corrupted pixels, you could basically perform remote code execution. Do you want to know what defenses the systems had against those particular attacks? Absolutely none. Because no one had considered them. No one had considered injection. No one had considered to check the veracity of the image files as they're being uploaded. Now, I mentioned I didn't actually want to do this slide because for no reason at all, I think just because they wanted to invalidate this part of my talk, and for no other reason, Finland joined NATO. So we're a little less worried about Russia now. A little bit less. We'll see if they have nukes, but I guess we'll find out. So thanks, Finland, for that. For like the first time I did this talk, it was literally a week before when they joined NATO. The timing's just suspicious. And now that I've gone through 3 different sections, I do want to leave you with this thought, which I really like from Richard Adler. Despite continued security problems, the IoT will spread and people will become increasingly dependent on it. The cost of breaches will be viewed like the toll taken by car crashes, which have not persuaded very many people not to drive. And that's my talk. I do have a couple of other orders of business. We'll get to some questions in a moment, if you have them. The reason I'm here, the reason my company paid for me to fly here, not because I wanted to get 4 Greg's sausage rolls, which I absolutely did, but we are running a DevOps conference. Now, the DevOps conference is free to join online. We are running it for the first time in London. We have kind of a cool lineup. We have Lockheed Martin coming to talk about Ted Lasso, of all things. We have Spotify and Lego coming along to tell about their DevOps experiences, and we have JP Morgan coming to speak about their user dev experience. Oh, pardon me, it's the beer. I will be there talking. I won't be drinking beer on that occasion because my boss will be there. But I will be giving a 5-minute talk on threat modeling where I will try to condense 3 days of workshops into 5 minutes. as I mentioned, online is always free. But if you want to join in the room, feel free to use this QR code. Yes, maybe I can.
Get rid of you.
Yeah, getting rid of me seems ideal.